بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. فمن بعد, we continue with our reminder and lesson on Abu Bakr as-Siddiq رضي الله عنه. His title was As-Siddiq, the truthful. Now, As-Siddiq comes from the root word, from the word Sidq, which means truthfulness. Therefore, the word As-Siddiq means a person who is constantly truthful or who constantly believes in the truthful of someone or something. In the case of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, both were true. He was himself truthful and he believed in the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this title was given to him by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a very interesting story about him and his truthfulness and the way he believed in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went in the celestial journey of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him from Mecca to Jerusalem and then from Jerusalem up into the seven heavens, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him whatever he wanted to show him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran, the first ayat of Surah Bani Israel or Surah Al-Isra. Subhanallazi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-harami ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwa as-sami'ul basir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this. Then when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came back and he narrated this story of Isra wal Mi'raj to the people of Mecca, there was a huge uproar. Abu Jahl came, he heard about this story, and he came to Rasulullah and he said, "Tell me, what is this thing you are saying?" So Rasulullah told him, he said, Allah took me last night from here, from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa, and then he narrated to him all the things that happened and of the story. And Abu Jahl said, "Tell me something. Let me call other people. I want other people to listen to you. Will you change your story? Will you say the same thing?" Now Rasulullah is thinking that maybe this is the time when Abu Jahl changes his mind and that maybe Iman is entering him. He said, "No, I will not change my story. This is the truth. I mean, what is there to change?" So Abu Jahl gathered a whole bunch of people and he said, "Now, Ya Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell them your story." And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told his story, there was huge laughing and mocking and jubilation and people falling all over themselves and saying, Abu Jahl said, "Well, he has destroys his own reputation. He is a liar. People have said, people can see that he is telling lies. Na'udhu billah, na'udhu billah, na'udhu billah." Even though Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave them all kinds of evidences, all of which were true, they knew it was true because he described Jerusalem and Masjid al-Aqsa in such detail, and people who had been there and seen it, and he had never been there, he had never seen it except in this journey, and they could not deny that. He said to them, a caravan is coming from Jerusalem to from Sham to Mecca, and in this caravan one of the camels got lost and they don't know where it is, and this is where the camel is. I told them that. So while he was traveling, he called out and they heard him, and then they found the camel. He said they are carrying water on their panniers, and I drank from that, and you can see the evidence of that. They sent a fast horse, they sent a fast rider to catch up with the caravan and ask them, and they said, "Yes, this is true. We heard the voice and we found the camel which was lost and we didn't know, and we also saw the signs that somebody had drunk from our panniers of water." But none of this convinced any of those people, including some of the Muslims who, because of this, the test was so severe, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from all tests, they left Islam. At that time, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was not there. So somebody went to him and they said, "Do you know what your friend is saying?" And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu asked him, he said, "What is he saying?" They said, "This is what he's saying, all of these things he's saying, and what do you say? Do you believe that? Do you believe what he's saying?" Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, "If he said that, I believe it. If he said that, I believe it." Now this fantastic statement of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu has become the criterion, the methodology of authentication of hadith. If he said it, we believe it. So our muhaddithun, may Allah grant them the best of the best, people who have preserved the deen and who do all their best to preserve the deen, they Alhamdulillah, they employ this methodology, which is they authenticate their narrative, right? They don't say, does this make sense? Is it logical, not logical? No. They say, did he say this? If he said it, it is true. It's very important to keep this basic fundamental principle in mind. Why is it that we focus on that? Why is it that we focus on, whether Rasulullah said something or not? Why don't we go into, is it logical, not logical, and all of those things, which is very important to understand, because the intellect, the aql, is not a source of knowledge, right? It's a processor of information which is fed into it, very much like a computer. So if you take a new computer and open the box, and I'm not talking about the preloaded stuff that comes in nowadays. Imagine that, and we have seen days when none of this stuff came. Everything had to be loaded onto it. So if you just take it out, here is the computer. Everything is fine, with nothing wrong with it, but it will do nothing. It cannot operate at all because there is no operating system on it. It has no software loaded on it. It doesn't have your data on it. It doesn't have access to the cloud and so on. So this machine will be useless. Even though it has the power to do a lot of good, the machine can work. It has the capacity, but it cannot actually perform the operations because it is lacking in that information which needs to be loaded onto it. Right? Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Adam alayhi salam, said about Adam alayhi salam, وَأَلَّمَ الْآدَمَ أَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam, He gave him the knowledge of all that is in the creation and whatever that means in the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before He told the malaika, now question him. So if they had just questioned him, obviously Adam alayhi salam was created, when he was created perfect, he was created complete, and therefore he had a brain, he had intellect, he had intelligence, but it was raw, it was new, nothing had been loaded onto it. There is a way. The brain is not a source of information. The brain is a processor of information. What is the source of information? There are two. One is tajriba. It is our own personal experience. So we see something, something happens to us, we listen to something and so forth. Using our senses, we have experiences. And these experiences become the source. This is the input, the data that gets inputted into our system. And then based on that information which has now been inputted from the external world, the brain, the intellect operates, and then it draws conclusions and it forms relationships and it gives us decisions and so on and so forth. The second source of information or knowledge is the wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there is a lot in life that we can learn from our own experience, but there is a lot of other stuff which we need to know, but we can never arrive at that knowledge by experience alone. And that is everything to do with the ghaib, with the unperceivable. We do not know what is in the qabr. We don't know what will happen to us when we go into our graves. We don't know what will happen when we are resurrected on the day of judgment. We don't know what will happen in the maidan of the field of Hashar when we are gathered before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so on. We don't know this. The only way we will know this is if we get this knowledge from the one who knows, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is where the Quran al-Kareem comes in. This is where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes in, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him with his kalam and with another body of knowledge which we know as the sunnah, which is to help to interpret the kalam. This is very, very important because this relates pertinently to all of those disputes which is theological wrangling, because people want to rationally understand every reality, even when they do not have the ability to comprehend it. We should be on our guard against this spirit of human overconfidence in which we seek. It is utter delusion to rationally understand every divine truth, whether theological or indeed even legal. We cannot do that. There is no way we can do that. We don't do this with other bodies of knowledge, for example, right? For example, you will not say, I will logically operate on you and remove your appendix. Because it's not a matter of logic. It's a matter of, do you know, do you have that body of information which is called anatomy and physiology and so on and so forth, and have you learned surgery? Have you studied it? Have you studied under somebody? Has somebody guided you? Do you know what you are doing? All of this has nothing to do with your with rational thought or with of deductive reasoning or something. You can't say, well, this thing looks like it is connected here, let me cut it. No, it doesn't work like that. Right? You need all of that. Now, based on all of that, now when you are performing the operation, now when you are performing that particular action, some new thing happens or some thing takes place there. Now you are able to use your rationale, rational thought and your logical reasoning based on the information which you got because of your training and your education, and come to a hopefully correct solution, right? We cannot do this issue of saying I will only do what rationally makes sense and I will just operate with my rationality with any body of knowledge, except for Islam. In Islam, we think that we are the last word without any training or any study or any preparation. This is a really, truly, it is I think, an indication of how really important we think Islam is, right? As far as we are concerned, for a lot of us, it's just lip service we pay, and we say, oh, Islam is so important, the most important, but we don't want to spend time and energy studying it. We don't want to take the pains to experience the concepts, and we would just want to pontificate in it from a position of complete ignorance. I warn myself and I warn you, don't fall into this trap of shaitan. One of the biggest traps of shaitan, because it makes you feel, oh, you are so intelligent. You're so intelligent. If you were intelligent, you would not be talking such garbage. Please understand this. If you were intelligent, you would not be talking this garbage. You would not be saying that logically everything. How can you have logically? How can you understand logically when you want to deny and stay away from the external input that you need in order to process? Makes absolutely no sense, right? So please. Now, Bakr رضي الله عنه decided to leave Mecca because the persecution of the Muslims became so high that he decided to leave Mecca and go to Abyssinia. Now, when he reached Bakr al-Qimad, which is about 5 days traveling distance from Mecca, he met a man, and his name was Ibn Abu Dughana. He was the chief of the Al-Qara tribe, which is a subdivision of the Banu Hawm Ibn Khuzaymah tribe. You don't need to remember all these names. I'm just narrating to you from the text through which which I'm using as a research base to understand all this. So, but it's important to have these names and so on. So Ibn Abu Dughana, he asked him, he said, where are you going? Yeah, Abu Bakr, because he was very well known. Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhi Allah was a famous man. So he said, my people they have forced me to leave Mecca. So I want to travel freely on the earth, and I want to worship my Rabb without anyone harassing me unnecessarily. All I want to do is pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they got a problem with that. So I will leave them and I will go away and I will worship my Rabb Jalla Jalaluhu. Now Ibn Abu Dughana, he said, someone of your rank and your character and your eminence in the society, you cannot leave. You don't leave, and you should not be forced to leave. This is very, very, very bad and foolish of your people, because indeed you provide for the needy, you join ties with people of family relations, you support the weak people, right? You do. I mean, Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhi Allah was famous for the good that he did to others, and you help others to come up in life. He said, no, I will provide you protection. I will give you protection, so you return and you worship your Rabb in your homeland. So Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhi Allah returned, and Ibn Dughana accompanied him. He got his sons to come with him. All of them were dressed in their armor and with their weapons and so on. And when they arrived in Mecca, Abu Dughana spent the entire night visiting the various noblemen of Quraysh. And to each one of them he said, verily someone of Abu Bakr's ranking and character does not leave his homeland and should not be forced to leave. Now, will you expel from Makkah a man who provides for the needy and joins ties of family and kinship, and he supports the weak, he honors his guests, and he helps others to rise above the difficulties of life and so on? The Quraysh leaders, they said, okay, we accept your guarantee of protection. But they said, tell him to worship his Rabb inside his house, to pray in his home, and to recite whatever he wants to recite in his home. He said he must not harm us. I imagine the word they used. He must not harm us by doing those acts in public and performing them openly, because we fear that our women and children will become Muslim when they listen to him. He said they will be put to trial. Now Abu Dughna conveyed his this message, and he conveyed their stipulations and their conditions, and Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhiyallahu Anhu began to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inside his house. Now he didn't recite Quran in front of anyone, and he prayed inside his house, not in front of anyone. And then Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhiyallahu Anhu, he had an idea. So he built a place of worship in the courtyard in front of his house. So in his little sort of small musalla, he built there. Now inside that, he would pray and he would recite the Quran. Now this was outside the house, but it was still covered, but it was more accessible. So people would gather around them, and they would simply watch him, and they would observe him, and they would listen to the Quran which he was reciting. Now Abu Bakr Radhiyallahu Anhu was a man also who cried frequently. So when he was reciting Quran, his eyes were well up with tears, and he would cry. On a side note, once Sayyidina Umar Radhiyallahu Anhu, who didn't cry that much, but he also cried a great deal in Salah. He read the ayah wa sujjatan wa bukiya. He said Allah is describing the believers, and he said they weep before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in sajda. So Sayyidina Umar Radhiyallahu Anhu was telling himself, he said, I make sajda, but where are the tears? Right? He says, where are the tears? SubhanAllah. And this is from people who were so connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anyway, the leaders of Quraysh now started to panic, because they find that these women and children and others who are gathering around this musalla of Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhiyallahu Anhu, they look like they are inclined towards Islam. And so they called Ibn Ad-Dughna, and they said to him, see, we guaranteed you the safety of Abu Bakr based on your guarantee of protection, and based on the condition that he would not worship his Rabb outside, that he would worship him only inside his house. However, now he is worshipping outside, and he has built a place of worship in the courtyard of his house, and there he prays and recites Quran, which is visible and audible to our people. So you tell him to stop that, go back inside the house, and if he agrees to the limits of that, of his worship in the house, then that is fine. But if he refuses and is determined to openly practice his faith, then tell him that you will take back your guarantee of protection, because we do not want to deceive you by violating your guarantee of safety which you gave him, but at the same time we will not allow Abu Bakr Radhiyallahu Anhu to openly practice his faith. Now Ibn Dughna went to Abu Bakr Radhiyallahu Anhu, and he said, you know what we agreed upon, that you will limit your religious activities, you will limit your prayers and so on to inside your home. So if you follow that agreement, then that is good. Otherwise, you have to return to me my protection, because I don't want the other Arabs to find out that my guarantee for a man was ignored and violated, because if they kill you or something, then it means that my guarantee was violated. So it will be a shame upon me. Abu Bakr Radhiyallahu Anhu said to him, in that case, I return to you your guarantee of safety, and Alhamdulillah, I am satisfied and pleased with the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jalla Jalaluhu, Huwal Hayyul Qayyum, and He is the one who is the possessor of might and majesty. So this is the one of the stories which tells us about the not just about the level of Iman and Yaqeen and the level of courage of Abu Bakr Siddiq Radi Allah Anhu, but also a big lesson for us in terms of where should we look to, towards whom should we look for safety, for protection, for support, and so on and so forth, in a world which may be hostile to us. Today we are living in times which seem to be extremely hostile to the Muslims. Where do we look for protection? Right? Now, people are afraid, people are tense and so on. But why? Because Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. And if our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is correct, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will turn our enemies into our friends. Somebody asked me a question the other day. They said, are you not afraid? Are your people afraid? Meaning my masjid and my the musallis. He said, are they not afraid? Are they not tense? I said, no, nobody is tense. I am not tense. They are not tense. I said, why? I said, because I said to them, this was a Jewish rabbi who asked me. So I said to him, tell me, who raised Musa alayhi salam? Who raised Musa alayhi salam? He said, the Pharaoh. I said, exactly. The Pharaoh raised Musa alayhi salam. Why? Because Musa alayhi salam's connection with Allah was correct. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused the one who was the declared enemy of Musa alayhi salam, who had slaughtered on his orders 70,000 children of the Bani Israel had been slaughtered for nothing. But when they found Musa alayhi salam, the Pharaoh himself became his guardian. He himself became the one who raised Musa alayhi salam and protected him. So I said the connection with Allah is what is important, not anything else. Now, migration to Medina, when Rasulullah and his Sahaba suffered immensely from the harm of the Quraysh, Rasulullah commanded his companions to migrate to Medina. Now, Aisha Siddiqa Radi Allah Anha narrates this beautiful story as narrated by her, our mother, and his Abu Bakr Siddiq Radi Allah Anhu's daughter. She said that Rasulullah said to the Muslims, I have had a vision in which I have been shown the place to which you will migrate. It's a land of palm trees between two mountains and two stony tracts of land. Thus, some of the Muslims migrated to Medina, and most of those who had left before for Abyssinia, which is current day Ethiopia, they also returned to Medina in the next few years. Abu Bakr Siddiq Radiallahu Anhu planned and he prepared to leave for Medina also. But Rasulullah said to him, wait a little, because I hope to be permitted also to migrate as well. Now, Abu Bakr Siddiq Radiallahu Anhu was delighted absolutely. He was, his heart was bursting with joy. And he said, do you expect that, Ya Rasulullah? May my parents be redeemed for you, subhanAllah, may my parents be sacrificed on you. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, yes. So Abu Bakr Radiallahu Anhu did not migrate in order to remain with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Mecca. He, however, prepared 2 camels and he fed them well for 4 months to use them in the long journey that was to come. The people of Mecca noticed that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had got adherents and supporters in another place, and they noticed the migration of his companions, fearing the departure of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam from Mecca, because then they said, if he goes from Mecca, then he will be completely out of our control, and then his religion will spread even more. Alhamdulillah, this is what actually happened. So they planned to kill him. Then, at that time, Jibreel alayhi salam came with the hukum to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to migrate, to leave Mecca and to migrate to Medina. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left his house. The Quraysh, what they did was, they said, look, if any of us individually kills him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the Banu Hashim, Banu Abdul Muttalib, they will become our enemies and we'll have to fight the whole tribe, because this was their culture. So he said, instead of that, what we will do, somebody gave them this idea, Shaitan gave the idea, that they said, pick one young man from each of the tribes, and all of them together go and kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that now the blame is on all the tribes. Now obviously the Banu Hashim cannot fight all the tribes, so then they will come to a agreement of payment in lieu of death, which is blood money and a diya, and therefore he said that can be paid, there's no problem. Paying the money is not an issue. We'll pay the money and the matter is over. We will not start a new blood feud. So this was the great advice that Shaitan gave them. And that's what they did. The whole group of people went, but when they came there, they found that in the bed of Rasulullah was his cousin Ali bin Abi Talib Radi Allah Anhu, who took the place of Rasulullah on his instructions. Rasulullah told him to sleep there. And he also had, even at that time, see the character of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. These people, many of them who did not believe in him, who resisted him, who even maybe opposed him in different ways. However, they trusted him to such an extent that they left their valuables in his care. They gave the valuables to him. And they said, you keep this in trust. And that's what he did. He kept those in trust. So he said, here are the trusts of various people. He gave Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu the details of that, and he said, pass them on to all those people who these things belong to. And Sayyidina Ali resembled Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in his demeanor, in his face, in his in almost every way. So he was in the bed. Of course, these people then they knew that they had missed Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was safe. As soon as they discovered that the besieging swordsman, as soon as they discovered that they had been tricked and that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had actually escaped, they went out in search of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They announced a prize of 100 camels on each of them, and this was announced for anyone who could find them and think, dead or alive, 100 camels each. And that's a huge amount of money. Even today it is, and those days it was like a fortune, literally. So they announced this. So this was these two, the most beautiful people on the face of the planet, they actually had to leave Mecca with a price on their heads. Then they spent 3 days in the Ghar Thawr, in a cave, Ghar Thawr, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused them to be saved. A spider spun a nest on the mouth of the cave, and a pigeon built its nest right at the foot there. And this is the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused the swordsmen, the hunters from Quraysh, to actually go right up to the mouth of the cave. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu is looking up like this, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, if they look down, they will see us. But this is the qudrat of Allah. Nobody can look up, down, anywhere without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And eventually the swordsmen, they saw the intact web, and they saw the pigeons and so on, and they left. And they said, well, there's no point in pursuing them more than this. They have actually escaped. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he says, when I was with the Prophet ﷺ, when I was with Rasulullah ﷺ in the cave, I raised my head, I saw the feet of the people, and he says he saw the people who were chasing them. He said, Ya Rasulullah, if any one of them just looks down at his feet, they would see us. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Ya Abu Bakr, what do you think of two people? The third of them is Allah. What do you think of two people? The third of them is Allah. Now the incident is described in the Quran Al-Kareem, in Surah Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِلَّا تَنْصُرُهُ فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا فأنزل الله سكينته عليه وأيده بالجنود لم تروها وجعل كلمة الذين كفروا السفلى وكلمة الله هي العليا والله عزيز حكيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this ayah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if you do not aid the Prophet ﷺ, Allah has already aided him. If you don't help him, Allah has already helped him. When those who disbelieved had driven him out of Mecca as one of two, when they were in the cave, and he said to his companion, And this is Abu Bakr Siddiq. Do not grieve, indeed Allah is with us. La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. This is one of the many fadail and honors of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, that he mentioned him also in the Quran and mentioned this incident. In closing, I want to say that Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, many years later, when he was facing the Ridda, facing the apostasy, the wars of apostasy, the people, the tribes which were apostating, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had passed away, people were afraid. The people of Medina, they thought, many of them, they thought that Medina itself will be attacked, and so then there will be chaos and bloodshed. Also, they were afraid for Islam. They said, it looks like this is the end of Islam. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu seemed to be completely calm and behaving with great equanimity. So they said to him, they said, how is it, you are not afraid of anything, and how come you are not tense? How come you are not worried? He said, from the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when I was with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the ghar, in the cave, Ghar al-Thawr, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said this, La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana, he said, the sukoon that Allah sent to me, this sukoon, this tranquility, this peace, this harmony in my heart, he said, I've never felt fear after that. Imagine Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the words La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana, or the words of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returned them back as his kalam to be recited until the day of judgment. I remind myself and you, let us appreciate this beautiful deen. Let us appreciate what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And let us appreciate the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has caused us to accept this deen and to be in this deen. And to treat it with the value that it deserves. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.